So on page 9, your book gives you a little tip here that says, remember, if you're rounding to the nearest 10, these are the numbers that you're going to be looking at. And they call these rounding frames. So again, it's just a little reminder, oh yes, these are the numbers we're looking at. So let's look at the number 87. Okay, so we know that we're rounding the number 87 and we're trying to figure out what would it round to. So because it's greater than 80, we have to go up. We want to go to the next 10. So we're looking at 90. So our question is 87 closer to, and this little rounding frame says, oh yes, you're just looking at 80 and 90. So is 87 closer to 80 or is it closer to 90? Okay, so remember, when we're looking at this, we have this rhyme, and it says, 5 or more, raise the score, 4 or less, let it rest. So when we think of that, we can say we're looking at this next digit. So we're rounding to the tens place. We're looking at the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I go to my second hand, which means it's going to bump down, and 87 is going to be closer to 90 than 80. I'm going to round 87 to 90. We can also see that with our dots. So if we drew 87, there's my 80. And now I can go up to 90. I'm just going to draw 90 over here just to see. Okay, now if I have 87, I'm going to draw my 80 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 80. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I only need 3 more ones to get to 90. That's really closer than 80, because 80 I would have to take away 7 of these to get over here. So this is 87, and I can see that it's much closer to 90. You might be asking yourself, why do I even care about rounding? So let me tell you, for me personally, the time that I use rounding the most is when I'm thinking about money, and I want to make sure that I have enough. So if something costs $87 and I have $80 or $90, when I walk up to pay, if I walk up with $80, I will not have enough to buy that item. So I need to walk up with $90 so that I make sure that I have enough. So it's really when you don't want to do the exact math, but you want to make sure that you have enough. So rounding is actually important in life, but it's usually for things that you're doing in your head. So we're going to do practice right now, because someday you might need to know if you have enough of something, and you might not want to sit down and do the actual calculation. So I usually use it with money, but you can use it for anything. Like if you're planning a party and you want to make sure that you have enough drinks for everyone, you might want to round, because it's always going to be okay to have extra, but running out is going to cause you a problem. So rounding is important, and that's why. I think you can round 16 on your own using the rounding frame. So it would be between 10 and 20. So see what you get, and we'll check this together. Here's what I'm curious about. What about this 171? So if you notice, the directions on this page say round to the nearest 10, but now we have a digit in the hundreds place. So I love these secret code cards because we can see what that looks like. Okay, so here we have 171. Now, I made the mistake of thinking, oh, are we rounding 100 to 200? But that's not the case, because we're just looking at the tens place. So we want to know, is it closer to 171, or is it closer to 170, or is it closer to 180? Because we're rounding to the tens place. So this digit in the hundreds place, it's just going to stay there for a while. We're not going to do anything with it. It's not going to change. We're really just making a decision between the tens. Okay, and we have 171. So I would have to count up 9 more to get to 80. Now, if I take this away, I only have to take away 1 to get to 70. So 171 is a lot closer to 170 than 180. So here's the tricky thing that most fourth graders forget. Most fourth graders will just write 70 down here, but they forget that there was a hundreds. Okay, we can't forget about this 100, even though we left it off when we were thinking about rounding. It's important for us to write that in our answer. So 171, we decided because it was 9 away from 80, if we did it on our dot sheet, we would have to add 9. But it's only 1 more than 70. So we're going to round 171 to 170. So likewise, if we use the rhyme, we're rounding to the tens place. So we would underline the digit in the tens place and look at the number next door, which is the 1. And we're going to ask ourselves, 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. If it was 5 or more, we would go up to 180. But because it's 4 or less, we're going to stay here. We say stays the same, 170. So the number in the tens place stays the same, and everything to the right turns to zeros. Okay, now they're really trying to trick us. They've given us this number, 2,165. But we're still rounding to the nearest 10. So that means we're still using this 10 frame. We're only looking at the tens place. So the 2,100 cards, we're just going to leave those be. We have to leave them there. We have to include them in our answer, but we don't need to look at them when we're rounding. So we could actually write them in here, 2,100, because we know we're going to have them in our answer. We're just trying to decide between the tens frame. And if we look here, we can see we're deciding between 60 and 70. Okay, so 60 and 70. So here's where we can use our rhyme. So we're underlining the 6 because that's the digit in the tens place, and we're looking at the number next door. If it's 5 or more, we say that it's closer to 70. It's kind of like, I imagine it going like a mountain. We've got 2,160 and 2,170, and 5 is the middle of the mountain, 65. When it goes up, so this would be 1, 2, 3, and then when it hits 4, it's fine, but when it hits 5, it's going to start going down to the other side. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. So 2,165 is going to round to 2,170. The digit in the tens place goes up to 70, and everything to the right turns to 0. Okay, pause the recording and see what you get for 2, 5, and 6. How'd you do? Did you round 16 to 20? And did you round 5,114 to 5,110? I hope so. Let's look at this one, 3,098. This one's tricky. Okay, so the important thing to remember is we're still looking at the tens place. So if you look up here at your tens frame, you'll see that the next 10 after 90 is actually 100. So when we're looking at our secret code cards, we have to ask ourselves, is 3,098 closer to 90 or closer to 100? Well, I've got 8 here. I only need 2 more to get up to 100. 8, 9, 10, 100. And I'd have to take away 8 to get back down to 90. Or we can think of the rhyme, 5 or more, raise the score. Okay, so we actually replace this 90 with the next 10, which is 100. So when we round 3,098, we actually round it to 3,100. This was a bonus. Did you get it right? So now when we're rounding to the hundreds, we have our first one, 734. So now we're looking here at the nearest tens, the tens frame. So we're going to do nearest 100. So we have to shift our mind a little bit, and we're no longer thinking about the tens, and now we're thinking about hundreds, right? So on our whiteboard, we're not thinking about quick tens anymore. Now we're thinking about how many hundreds do we have? Okay, so let's use our secret code cards to figure this out. So 734. So if we look up here, we can see, okay, it's more than 700. So it's going to be between 700 and 800. Do you see it? So we can use the same steps that we did over here on our tens. We're rounding to the nearest hundreds now. So we're only looking at that digit in the hundreds place. And we're asking ourselves, what about the three tens? Is that closer to 700 or is that closer to 800? I'm not going to use the dots because I don't want to have to count out all these hundreds. So instead I've got 700 over here. I've got 800 over here, and in the middle, I've got 734. So you can see how the ones don't really help us. It's really these quick tens that make the difference. So the quick tens, we've got 3 of them. If we wanted to get up to 800, we would need 7 more. But if we want to get down to 700, we only have to take away 3. So by looking at this, we can see it's going to be much easier for us to get down to 700. Back to our secret code cards, 734, we can see that it's actually going to be a lot closer to 700 than 800. So when we round to the nearest 100, we don't do anything with this. We turn it to a 0, and we are going to round it to 700. So everything to the right of that hundreds place turns to a 0. So the 7 stays the same, and everything to the right turns to a 0. So let's try one with the thousands. This number, 6,249. Now here's the thing to remember, we're rounding to the nearest hundred. So we're looking at our hundreds frame, and we've got more than 200. So we're trying to figure out, is it gonna be 200 or 300? Don't make the mistake of grabbing your 7,000s card. That's what I did first. That is the most common mistake, but we're not rounding to the thousands place. Even though there is a number in the thousands place, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So we're going to follow our rule, and we're going to look at our hundreds. So the 6 just is going to stay there. We can write it down on our answer already because it is not going to change. Okay, so we're trying to decide between 200 and 300. So we're going to look next door at the 4. So what that looks like down here is you can say, I'm looking at the 2, so I'm going next door and looking at the 4. And we can think about this rhyme. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. So because it's a 4, we're going to let it rest, and it's going to be closer to 200. So our answer will be 6,200. Okay? See what you do on the 8, 9, 11, and 12. Pause the video and you can check it when you're done. Did you round 363 to 400? How about 178 to 200? 8,251 to 8,300? Let's look at this one, 8,992. Oh, this one is tricky. So if I put out my secret code cards, I've got 8,992. Now I'm rounding to the nearest hundreds place. So when I look up here at my frame, I've got, oh no, it's between 900 and 1,000. So now I have to figure out, is this closer to 900 or is it closer to the next 1,000? So I can use my rhyme when I go next door. So I'm looking at the hundreds place, going next door to the tens place. Is this 5 or more? Well, yes, it is. It's 9. So I know that I'm going to have to round up. How do I round up from 900? If I know that the next 100 is 1,000, but I've already got an 8. Well, here's the magic. You're going to add 1,000. So we're going to go from 9 up to 1, but we've got an 8, So it's actually going to be 9,000. Okay, so because 8,900, 100 more makes it 9,000. So we're going to round 8,992 to 9,000. Wow, that was tricky. Let's look at the next part. Now we're rounding to the nearest thousand. So you have to switch your brain over, and we're looking up here. Here we've got 8,665. We're rounding to the nearest thousand. So we're thinking about our thousands frame here. 8,000, and the next one is 9,000. Okay, so we're looking at the digit next door, which is a 6. 5 or more raise the score. 6 is greater than 5. So we can see that this is lots closer to 9,000 than 8,000. So we're going to round this number up to 9,000. Okay, see if you can do the rest here. We're rounding to the thousands place. So pause the video, round the rest, and then we'll check in with number 18. Did you round 5,482 to 5,000? 3,804 up to 4,000? 1,501, remember 5 or more, raise the score. The 1 turned to 2,000. Let's look at this one, 9,702. I don't even have secret code cards that are going to go high enough for this because it tells me that the highest 9,000, beyond that comes 10,000. And here we go. 7 is greater than 5. 5 or more, raise the score. So we can think of the 9 in the thousands place is going to go up to a 10,000. So the answer to 18 is 10,000. How'd you do?